Right, this is a land use committee meeting and it's April 21st, 2026. And I'm Ann Mazar. And I'm the chair of the land use committee. Why don't we go around, Elena?
Sure. I'm Elena Brugos. I'm the select board representative.
Peter Gordon for the Conservation Commission. Frank Muir, land use member.
All right, did you get a chance to look at the minutes?
Yes.
Anyone want to make a motion?
Make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
All right,
I'll second.
all right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor, do we have to do, no one's online,
No
so,
one's online, so we don't need to do roll call.
okay, so all those in favor?
I,
All right. Okay,
because the other, so Barry is not able.
no, Barry or Carolyn, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And I just wanted to mention that the town cleanup is going on through May 9th, and I noticed the website only talks about the kickoff date, so it's still going on.
Okay.
Mhm.
I asked if there was going to be a sign up for streets.
There is.
There is.
It's
up there
online.
now. Okay, I'll have to
Yeah.
check it out because I stopped by and I picked up some bags on Saturday, but I didn't have time to actually pick up trash.
Yeah,
And I didn't want to just sort of go through in my head, like, what streets do I know? Because the one I usually do was already taken.
Yeah, taken,
So
yeah.
I got like, want to look at the menu of streets.
yeah, though there's a lot of streets that, can be cleaned. And they didn't open the registration for the streets until the kickoff.
Right.
Because John wanted it to, kind of start then, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, please tell people.
And I think they still have bags available.
They do.
At the real estate
Yep.
office.
Yeah. And at the Board of Health during
Okay.
hours and highway. Yeah, and you can sign up online. So the next one is, the town hall campus. Leah Bada Whiting said she would do the front beds,
Nice.
yeah. And she wanted some money to for just, she'll, do it for free, obviously, her labor, but she wanted some funds to get compost and plant the flowers and whatnot. So, I said we could ask the land use
Do you
committee.
think that's needed?
She's saying like around 100. She said 100 to 150, but she thinks that it would be like 100, something like that.
You want a motion to,
Well, the other thing I want to mention is that we have $788 left and we don't really have any other expenses. And Vinny, who's been helping with the native plants on the town hall, is going to order some flats of flowers, or will order some flats of flowers and different plants. And also we'll do some weeding. And so I'd like to set aside the rest of the money to work on all that.
So for both.
Yeah, yeah, because it definitely needs it. And also it could be for other people to pay for them to help weed. And I'll volunteer and do some weeding, without pay and everything. But also there is a grounds person. And so that person is going to do the mulching, edging the beds, mowing, reseeding when that's needed, other things like that, and bushwhacking the sides where there's all the weeds and things like that. But the more detailed stuff,
and who's kind of managing that? Isabella or you? Or?
It kind of me, but I'm involving, though. Isabella's involved, Dan's involved, John at the highway, because the grounds person is going to be more involved, which would be nice. And and eventually I think the grounds person can maybe do everything, but I just want to stay on top of it so that the rain gardens and the bioretention basins and everything really fill out and do their job. And Mike Bellaquava is the grounds person, and he'll like clean the drains in the rain gardens also. There's sort of like a list of things that he'll be doing, but.
And so can you remind me, so the funds, you say we have
$88 and
Is
change.
that like the annual,
Yeah.
left of the annual budget?
Yes.
And then after the end of
Yep.
the fiscal year? Okay, so
So
I
I,
see. So
and-
this is, if we have a land use function for it, this is our chance. And because there's
exactly,
not too
yeah,
many meetings left.
right.
Okay.
Okay, so now just if someone would like to make a motion,
So it would be like to spend up to the 788 or,
yeah, or yes, and then
Okay.
I'll probably ask next year also for when, after July 1st, for probably some more money, just to stay on top of the weeding and things like that, but right now, I figured we'd just vote on this.
I'll
I think-
move to expend not to exceed 788 for plants.
And change, I'm not exactly,
materials.
even exact, let me just look up and see what the exact amount is. Oh, $788.04, so.
788 and 4 for plants, mulch,
Okay.
and weeding labor.
Yeah,
second,
and also like consultation, which we don't have to put in the motion, but
Okay.
Vinny's really good at seeing what the area needs,
Mhm.
and so
and this is specifically for the town hall.
just the town hall campus and the yeah, this area. Did someone second that?
I did.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Great, okay, thank you. The next one, oh, I just wanted to mention the municipal aggregation, that whole thing. So it's been 2 years almost, and I know,
How is that possible?
I don't know.
I don't understand time.
yeah. And so Jeremy wants to wait till after the annual town meeting, but we're gonna pick a, either renew it or pick another vendor, but it worked out well in the last 2 years. People saved $60 in the last year from the normal regular National Grid that they would automatically, get put on if they didn't choose another vendor. And then also, 10% more renewable energy was used in there. Yeah, so, it worked out well. And then people can opt up to do more renewable energy or less if they want to. And you can opt out at any time. And so,
And I know that we saw the email with the spreadsheet, but I didn't,
Sure.
like, what was how many people enrolled? Like, did you?
it's like 1,500, I think, meters,
Oh,
which is a lot. It's a lot. Yeah,
Okay,
the
so that's-
majority.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Because it was right, because people needed to expressly opt out, so that means probably about 500. Is it
I don't-
homes and businesses?
Yes. Mhm.
Great.
And, and I don't know that exactly. The spreadsheets I thought they're kind of confusing. It's a lot of information. They don't like
I
say,
didn't have time to look. I just saw
So-
the emails about
right.
the contents of the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I just wanted to know how much the average person saved, over
Yeah.
like the last year. And so $60, didn't cost more, and
Is
Good for the
that
environment.
number affected on an annual basis? Are there any factors that would increase or decrease that, or is it?
if the basic national grid rate is better, is lower, then you wouldn't have the savings.
Mhm.
But that hasn't happened, at least in the last 2 years. And
Is there anything as a town or that we have to do on an annual basis to enroll or?
every 2
subscribe?
years. Well, I mean, we signed up for 2 years with the Colonial Power found direct energy, and they came up with a good price per kilowatt, and so we chose to go with them. But the same thing will probably happen. We'll find out what the rates are for all the different companies and then pick the best one that we think would work. Yeah, and then you also have estimates of what National Grid will most likely be, so you can kind of gauge what.
Well, any little bit will help with the energy bills,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the state, yeah. I mean, a lot of it's renewable energy, so at least you're not having to worry about fossil fuels, in the war and all that. But so I think that decision will be made in the summertime, or at least by the fall. I don't remember they didn't really tell us when the date is, but we need to start thinking about it. So I just
Okay, yeah.
want to mention that. And, so then, did you see the accounts for the energy energy accounts that we have there. We talked about switching them over to Isabella, since she's the energy coordinator. And so in Mass Save, we had $6,219. Solarize Plus had $3,699. And then Green Communities had $571. And so we didn't want to make the motion until we knew the exact amounts, and those what the amounts are. So would someone like to make the motion to transfer those funds?
Where do they get transferred from?
Those accounts, like these are grants that I helped apply for in the
Okay.
past. And so they're like these miscellaneous energy accounts, and all of them are for energy efficiency.
So, but is it specifically, are these accounts being closed, or is it just that Isabella would have like agency
Yeah.
over them? So like,
Yeah.
is it the accounts themselves or just the, I guess, the power to expend?
I mean, the probably the power to expend, but what Isabella said, she would probably come to this committee and say, oh, I want to apply for this grant. I'd like to use $3,000 in
Okay, I
that
see.
save, you know, so she'd
So
keep us in the
land
loop.
use has purview over those funds now?
Kind of right now. I mean, you know, we applied for these grants like the Solaris Mass Plus, those ones, and then it was really just volunteers working on it. There wasn't really any official, I mean, we got the select board approval, and then the funds were expended for the program. So the land use committee has sort of been overseeing it, but I don't know that officially that's was required.
Right.
But I think it would be nice to officially have the energy coordinator who's, you know, working on green communities and all those programs to have the funds.
Yeah. Have you talked about it with Jeremy at all?
No, but we'll have to go through. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I don't really understand how some of the accounts
Right.
work. And especially now that those projects are passed, so.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be worth having just a conversation.
I might have talked to him. I think I might have actually talked to him about this already.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think he said it made sense, but I can't 100% sure.
Right, but yeah, yeah, I guess I'm just wondering about the process.
Yeah. And I don't know if the account can just do that, or if the select board has to approve it, or what, you know.
Right.
But I'll go through the correct process of whatever it is and say that
Right,
if
yeah.
you vote yes, that the
Yes.
land use committee, you know.
Right, I mean, I'm fine with sort of Isabella being the one who could look for the best ways to use those funds, you know, for the purposes of that grant money. So
I follow up to Frank's.
Yes.
Where are we transferring those funds to?
Well, it's not really transferring. I guess it's more
Authorizing?
authorizing Isabella to be in control of the accounts. Because, I mean, part of it too is,
Now losing control.
I mean, me,
Yeah.
you know, and sort of like someone has to stay on top of it, or it's just going to be like, what is this account? And so these are funds that we got for energy efficiency. Solarize Plus would be for also renewable energy. So, I mean, they could be used for different things. Like it could, like the renewable energy, I know we once bought the kits for the schools to use so that the kids could make use solar panels and then make machines that worked, you know, just to understand like how solar worked. Or it could be buying books, or it could be like if she's applying for a grant and you need matching money, then, you know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Could she report to us if she has jurisdiction over those? Could she at least, if she doesn't have to come to us to authorize the release, I think at a minimum, she should report on a regular basis what funds were expended and for what.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, she said that she would come to the land use committee, you know. I don't
I'm
know.
thinking also of the future, if beyond Isabella, if it's
Yep.
given to that person individually to have authority over, I think there should be some oversight. Not necessarily permission to expend them, but at least some sort of review of what was spent, what it was for.
Well, I think also it could be that when she wants to use the money, just come to the committee, because like, you know, it might sit there for 2 years, and so to come every month and say, or, you know, twice a year or something and say it's not spent. But
I think if it's
You know.
efficient that she oversees it and spends it when necessary, then that makes sense. And whether it's reporting to us on a certain basis, not every time or every meeting necessarily, but just to
Once a year, maybe.
have some input, I guess, and comment on what those things may be. And
Yep.
and it's not an Isabella thing, it's the energy coordinator thing. If they would have sole authority over those funds, I think it would help to have our feedback.
Yeah, well, like I said, Isabella said that she would, work with the land use committee, but how would you word a motion then,
To authorize conservation clerk,
Well,
To-
energy coordinator, I'd say
the
energy
energy
coordinator, yeah,
coordinator, to manage unexpended funds under the jurisdiction or under the working, I don't know how to phrase, under the supervision of the land use committee.
How about if we put a number on a cap? 100, 500, some number that they would have, whoever the energy coordinator was, would have to come to us and get authority. Maybe the smaller expenditures, maybe reporting on a even quarterly basis, but any expenditure over X would require our review and approval.
what number would you want that to be?
$1,000, 500.
1,000, huh?
I mean, I think it's just a governor, right? That, I don't know what a typical expense might be. They might all be relatively nominal. And we don't have to involve ourselves on smaller expenditures. So and I don't know what would be a large expenditure, but I'd be fine with 1,000 just to
Okay.
maintain some sort of oversight of larger expenses.
So authorize the energy coordinator, unexpended funds.
To spend up to $1,000
Mhm.
on any legitimate project, and then come to the land use for approval for anything greater than that.
And specifically from those accounts that you mentioned. right?
Yeah, I'll list them. So who made that motion?
I'll second that.
Peter. Okay. All right. Oh, any more discussion? All those in favor?
I-
Aye. Okay. Oh, okay. So the next item is the land use committee bylaw. We
Mhm.
discussed it and all that, and then town council came back. And her big changes were, we said about, if there's land that the town wants to buy, they can get it from, I don't know what we said. What did we say? I think we said the land bank. I can't find it right now, but we also added CPA funds, grants, private gifts, property taxes. And then we said CPA funds. And so town council said, we don't have the authority to use CPA funds. And so she just worded it. She was going to take it out. And I was like, yeah, but that's really important funds to use. And so she worded it to say that approved by majority vote of the Community Preservation Committee at a duly noted meeting of the CPC.
Mhm.
And I said, that's fine, but, I wanted to include that because that's like the major source of funds for purchasing a lot of the land. And then the other issue she had was that the land use committee will develop a land use program, and she wanted to add to make recommendations with respect to purchasing of real property to the select board. Like, we can't just go out and purchase property to separate.
Right.
So those are the big
I
changes.
think she would further say that we may not be able to expend money unless the board has approved, has approved their, or assented to acquiring the land, right?
Yes, and that's true, and that's what we've done, but she, wanted it in there, specifically, which I was like, yeah.
Makes sense.
So we didn't, vote on this new version, and so for the town meeting, we need to vote on that if.
So she go, it was, and this was in the original, no funds may be spent by the land use committee. And then she added for appraisals, engineering, planning, or legal services associated with determining whether to recommend those acquisitions without the prior approval of the select board. So I think that's important if we were gonna spend money. You know, if we thought that was the case, we voted in the past, I think, on that, would that apply? You know, if we're exploring a particular land to purchase, I think what this implies is that we can't spend that money unless the select board approves it.
Mhm.
Not the expenditure of the money, but that,
Any
without
money
the-
spent for like.
Yeah.
So-
research or anything.
I think that if it was for open space, recreation, historic, or affordable housing, we would go to the Community Preservation Committee because they can use administrative funds to do engineering and all those things. So that would be covered. And you don't have to go to town meeting for that because you're doing your due diligence to figure out if you want to go to town meeting to ask, And then if it was something else, I think what we would probably do is go to the select board and say, there's this property that'd be perfect for a school, and then you have a fund probably and would ask for that if, or if we had time, go to a town meeting.
so she says here that without the prior approval of the select board and the majority of voters at the annual town meeting.
For purchasing land, that's true.
Of the actual purchasing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
No
there's,
funds may be spent by the land use committee for appraisals, engineering, planning, legal services associated with determining whether to recommend acquisition of property without the prior approval of select board.
where are you reading that? Just so I can follow.
That's subsection 2.6.
2.6, okay, so start that again.
So
No funds
the
may be
last
spent.
sentence,
Yeah,
no
no-
funds may be spent.
Yeah, by the
by
land use
for
committee.
Appraisals, engineering, or planning and legal services, I would include.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be, plot plans, title searches associated with determining whether to recommend acquisition of the property without select board and town meeting or special town meeting approval.
So we're suggesting we want to change that to, for that purpose, all we feel we need is the approval of the CPC.
Well,
Well-
it's CPC money, that, right, so.
Right, yeah, the select board for land, I mean,
For the big ticket,
Right,
it's got to
yeah.
be approval, but for surveying or for title search.
yeah, I don't know. No funds may be spent by the
We
land
can't
use committee
even
for appraisal,
recommend.
engineering,
If we're gonna
planning,
recommend,
and
we
services
can't.
associated with determining
No,
whether to recommend acquisition of property without prior approval by the select board. Yet, and a majority of voters,
that's pretty strict.
right. I mean, CPC could, but then that would limit it,
Only for those.
right? You might have another use that,
Well, if CPC already has that power, we don't need the power, right?
Right,
We
but-
can do the work and ask the CPC to.
we
pay for
could,
it and-
except for if it's like land for school
Or
or,
a municipal building.
or like
Well,
maybe,
That's okay, then the selectmen should be.
But it's also town meeting, so that, I think that's, but it's
Well, I guess-
town meeting even just for like the
the engineering.
engineering and title search and so that just slows things down. A
Wait,
lot.
and
Like,
you-
usually it's
How
town
often do
meeting
you
for
have a special meeting?
but you have to do it
Just
from home
once.
before you do that,
Right,
do that.
What happens if we just wipe that out?
well, we have to go back to
Don't
town
do it.
council for sure, but, without prior approval of the select board. Yeah, I don't know why she says, and the majority of voters at an annual town meeting, especially, because that was in the old bylaw, it looks like.
I mean, it's one
Well,
thing to
'cause
go
it's
to
in
the
the-
select board and say, hey, we're thinking about this, we're gonna spend money, let's say on a title report, on appraisal,
Yeah,
and there's some oversight there.
Right,
But an annual meeting happens annually,
right.
and that.
Right, special town meeting, I mean, right, we got 2 meetings a year. Yeah, it would slow things down a lot. Because sometimes there's a pretty small window to make a decision about these.
So maybe if we start at the top and so we, following the public.
Right.
Following this public hearing.
which is the public hearing we have once a year, and we have that
Yeah.
5-year land use plan, which is not specific. It doesn't say like, we want to do these specific land purchases, more general.
So they say here, following the public hearing, the proposed land use program shall be presented to the voters. So of course, it'd be approved by a majority vote.
Yep.
If there are specific land purchases proposed,
Right, which could be, I think, separate from the land use
that
program,
would be subject to approval.
which,
And if they are approved, land use committee shall be empowered to expend funds.
for appraisal, engineering, or planning and legal services.
And then she goes on, or the wording goes on, no funds may be spent for those appraisal, engineering, planning. Without,
And so the black means that it was in the previous bylaw?
yes,
Okay.
I
So that was not-
believe, yes, and then, because the red is what we changed, and the blue is what she added.
so if the select board approved specific land purposes that were proposed, then we are empowered to expend funds for appraisal,
Right.
engineering, planning, legal services. The next sentence, no funds may be spent by the land use committee for those things without prior approval.
The problem with, if there are specific land purchases proposed, said purchases shall be approved by a majority vote. A
Gotta be
majority,
a little bit of due diligence, right?
Right,
If you're
yeah.
gonna propose something.
a majority vote of the select board, after which
Yeah.
warrant articles shall be submitted to the town meeting vote. Plus, the thing about land is, like, let's say if the perfect land came up for, that the town needed for a new expanded senior center,
Mhm.
you sometimes you'd have to schedule a special town meeting, I guess, if you wanted to do that.
Well, yeah, although, I mean, it says that no funds may be spent by the land use committee, but if they're, I don't know if, like, the select board has funds that could be used. Like, right, specifically,
That's money.
Right,
Right, but-
that's what I was wondering, yeah.
yeah, so like, it just specifically, this is about the land use spending funds, but
Yeah,
is it in, does the land use have
we don't really have,
budget for that anyhow?
I mean, we have like $3,000,
Would that even be enough for?
I think
Maybe, but-
we've authorized expenditures for title exams and maybe some
Yeah.
limited survey
Yeah.
work or.
But I mean, maybe,
We will, actually,
Right.
when we've done that, those requests for like the title work, we went to town meeting and asked for funds to do that.
okay,
So let me think about this for a second.
If CPC has the authority and funds, why are we even asking for it?
Well, because, again, if it's not historical, recreation, open space, or affordable housing, then CPC can't do it. So it's those other things, but then the select board would have the power, so, wait a sec.
Yeah.
If there's specific land purchase proposed, said purchases shall be approved by majority vote of the select board, after which warrant articles shall be submitted for a town meeting vote. If warrant articles are approved, the land use committee shall be empowered to expend funds for appraisal, engineering, or planning and legal services. No funds may be spent. She's kind of repeating it again, really. Legal services associated with determining not whether to recommend acquisition of property without prior approval by the select board and the voters.
I think the last sentence is the negative of the prior sentence.
Right, yeah, I don't know, why do they, yeah, why do they do
You're
that?
not gonna do it
Yeah.
unless you get the
Yeah.
approval.
I don't know, why do they do that?
And it's a little hamstringing, right?
Yes, I'm just thinking, like, if we said, okay, this is perfect land for a new school, and we went to the select board, okay, we couldn't use our funds maybe, but I think the select board could possibly use their funds.
I think it's the whole annual or special town meeting that is more limiting than just having to go to the select board.
right, well, I mean, but I think that's that the land use committee can't spend the funds, but potentially some other
Committee could,
committee.
right, like, we could recommend
To
it
this,
to, yeah,
but I don't know, I don't know that the select board has funds for that purpose, like, it's like,
mhm.
And is that limited to the land use budget, or are we talking about other funds? Or is it just limit what we as a committee could spend?
Well, I think it's. If this committee was gonna spend money on appraisals or engineering, we have to go to town meeting. We can't just use our
So
budget.
it just conditions what we can spend money on. Well, by saying you can't spend money on this, but you can spend money presumably on other things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that, I mean, I know in the past with other town administrators, they have used money without going to town meeting to do those types of things. So I assume you can do that, but
Historically, in your experience, is that necessary at all, that appraisals, engineering or planning or legal services, is that something that, just doesn't happen that often and therefore maybe not as concerning, or?
no, you definitely need to do all that, because you find out information that, oh, we thought it was 10 acres and it's only 3 acres.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
And
Like, or whatever.
timing is important, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I wonder if we had to wait for an annual meeting. No one would call a special meeting, I don't think, for that
Unless it was something that
single
was,
purpose.
unless it was a piece of land that the select board was like, we have to get this, and they do sometimes set up an extra special town meeting, but that hasn't been done in a long time.
I think at a cost too, right?
Right,
I
it's
mean,
right,
that
exactly.
offsets somewhat the benefit of.
Yeah. Well, what we could do is approve this as written if the select board has the power to spend money on the appraisals and the engineering, the due diligence. And then we
Some
could
sort of
find that out.
flexibility,
I could find
right?
that out. Or you could find that out. I can find that out. You're busy. Okay, I'll find
And
that
then
out.
maybe some explanation why it might be so limiting. Because there's no comment on that section. She didn't make any comments on maybe why it seems restrictive, but.
I mean, I guess,
This in the rationale, or?
I mean, the thing is if town council has to change it, and then we have to vote on it again before the town meeting. I mean, it's possible, but there's a lot of changes here, and so and because the bylaw didn't make sense since we had the CPA and other things. So it might be good to change what's here, and then if we need to tweak it, do that at the November town meeting, because it really hasn't stopped us, from doing anything to this point.
And maybe in the meantime, just some clarity, maybe to say, does that seem, not overly restrictive, but because we're not looking to,
Yeah, I don't mind that the restriction because the select board has to approve the purchases and the moving forward with it. Like, even on CPA, we can do the due diligence, but we'll usually say, oh, there's this property or
So maybe just the
But-
recommendation comes from us, but the
Yeah.
spending of money and the due diligence would be
well,
CPC.
and it might be that if the select board says, yes, you can do engineering, we might end up following through and doing the work, but then billing the select board. That kind of thing I've been involved with,
All right,
so
So you want a motion to accept that with
I would,
as is, and we
I would-
come back and review it?
I think so. I mean, because there's a lot of changes on this, which would be really helpful to have done.
Right.
And I'll find out about if the select board can, spend money on,
Maybe just get rid of that one sentence. That's okay.
yeah, it just takes a while. And I know that they're working on a lot of other things for town meeting. And so I feel like this is pretty good. I mean, this is,
Progress.
yeah, it's a lot of good changes
and
there.
those last sections that were deleted, those don't concern you, or you don't have any comment, right?
No, we crossed those out because,
Did we do that?
yeah, because,
About the land bank.
yeah, because they never set up a land bank. I set up a land bank for open space, but then CPA came along, and so it's doesn't make sense anymore.
All right, next.
Because they were saying that every year you have to go to town meeting and and vote to put money in it because they had no funds then. But they never really went forward and did that.
Or with the motion different?
So I would make a motion to accept the revisions to the land use bylaw,
Land use committee bylaw, land use planning bylaw.
land use planning bylaw as submitted by town council.
Sorry.
Right. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor?
I,
Aye. Okay, good. Yeah, and I don't mind taking the notes because now we get the AI, so it's
I
gonna be
was,
helpful.
just side note, those were well-written, minutes, a lot better than I could do. They're broken down by topic, and if it can save me the, not that they're very lengthy, but you want to accurately reflect what was discussed. So,
Mhm.
and I think those last minutes were pretty good, so.
Yep. There might be some times when I need you to just kind of jot notes down, but I didn't mind doing this meeting. And I don't have anything else. If anybody else has anything.
you
Election season coming up and as far as terms, I don't even know when my term is up. I mean, I'm
We
a
can look it up.
land use member, but now I'll be a planning board member. And I don't know how that works.
Well, it's up to the planning board to nominate you, right? Or hopefully they would, but
Well,
But actually, but he's an at-large member,
Watch now.
because, let's see. You're here till the 2027. Barry's, anybody else is 2028, so,
oh,
and then Carolyn is, to be determined, so I don't know if she's forever or what.
So the question is, would we have two representatives from planning board? No, would that?
I don't think it would be a representative from the planning board. I think I presume I would stay at large, but also be a member of the planning board.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then Barry, he's on the planning board again.
Try to,
oh, right, and if Barry doesn't want to continue conceivably, you
Right.
could put your name in the hat for it to be.
If he
the planning
withdrew
board.
for any
Right.
reason.
Yeah.
No, I'll convince him to stay.
You can switch.
I mean, nothing's any different, right? When you're at large and
Yeah.
planning board,
Yeah.
or a board representative, frankly, we all have the same input and so forth, so.
Yeah. But no one's up for this 2026 anyway,
Right.
so.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
This meeting was recorded. And I'm gonna end the recording now. Let's see.
Good job on the technical workaround.